Hello. As you might know, I am from Germany. And in Germany we have a lot of German books. And, German literature has quite an interesting history, I would say. With the world wars going on, books being banned. If the book that you're reading is German and it hasn't been banned by the Nazis, I don't think it's worth reading it. Anyway, I would like to introduce you to some books that, some of them which are more famous and some of them I have never ever seen on BookTube before, and I would like to bring them a little bit closer to you. These are 8 books in kind of chronological order of when they were released. Let's start the list with a guy that is not even German. Josef von Eichendorff is an Austrian author, and this title, Aus dem Leben eines Taugenichts, translates to The Life of a Good for Nothing. And it's just like this old novella that I randomly picked up, and it resonated with me so much. The main character, they call him a good for nothing. Oh, I'm sorry. But he's just kind of like this trickster, joker kind of thing, like the tarot card, the Fool, if you know what that is. He's kind of like that. He just goes into the world. He just wants to play. He wants to have fun. He wants to enjoy, And people call him a good for nothing, but really he isn't. He's just enjoying his life and everything. He achieves a lot actually, and this book is lovely. That's the only one of his I have read. He wrote a lot of poems also and some other novellas. I wanna read his complete works. I'll probably do that maybe next year. This is the first one, 1826. So we're jumping about 100 years now. All quiet on the Western Front. I hope you have heard about this book, because you should have heard about this book, It is, in my opinion, one of the most important German works of literature. It's not talked about as much as I think it deserves to be talked about. If you don't know what this is about, this is an account of the First World War from the perspective of a young soldier, a boy who's in school, and everybody gets drafted for the war. They don't really get drafted, they get heavily pushed to go to war and to serve their country, that kind of bullshit. And they go there and they just get completely fucking destroyed, like their psyches, their bodies, everything, their whole perspective. And it feels so human, it feels so real. It is semi-autobiographical. The protagonist, Paul Bäumer, it's Erich Maria Remarque's, his real name is Erich Paul Remarque, and his mother's maiden name is Bäumer, so there you go. And in real life, he got injured and went home, and in the book, after he gets injured, he goes back to war. And I don't think it's a spoiler that he dies. And the ending, it's gonna make you cry. I read this when I was like 16, like in 11th grade, I think, or in 10th grade. And even then, I thought that everybody should read this book. This is gonna change your, I don't know, you probably won't even be watching this channel if you like war, but this is gonna turn you into a pacifist, this book, I promise. The next two, we're between the world wars now, chronologically. These are two of my favorite authors of all times. Disclaimer, if you have not read anything by them, I don't think this is a good place to start. First we got Amerika by Kafka. This was, technically he's not German too, but he wrote in German. This was released under different titles in different versions. The first chapter was released by itself, and I'm not quite sure, but I think this version was released posthumously. It's not completed, it's a fragment, and it's about a guy, a young man who gets sent to America, and in true Kafka fashion, everything just keeps getting worse and worse, and you think he hits rock bottom, and then he goes like down from that, and everybody hates him, everybody treats him terribly. This sounds like a terrible book to read, but it evoked emotions in me that I didn't know that a book could do that. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but I think you get what I'm saying here. This really made me feel things in a very different way of what I'm using. You know, usually books make me feel happy or melancholic or sad or scared. This, I don't know, this just, read this. If you like Kafka, this is a must. And even if you don't like Kafka, I think you should read this. Next up, we got the Steppenwolf. People ask me what my favorite book is, I always say it's this one right here. I think Hermann Hesse has enough substance that I could make a whole video just about him, and maybe I'll do that if I feel like it, and if anyone is interested, I'll do like a deep dive. I could do one on Kafka too, but Kafka is getting so famous again that I think most people know about him, but this guy, he is super famous in Germany still, and I think, well, in translation he didn't get as famous. Maybe it's because of the way he writes, but I read this in English too, and it I loved it exactly as much. This is very different from the characters that Hesse writes in his other novels. Usually it's these young guys and they go out into the world, you know, like the Bildungsroman. And they experience the world and they suffer, and there's lots of nature writing, and it's beautiful and sparkly like a golden sunset. This is completely different. This guy is old and grumpy and bitter, and he drinks, and he's just like a sad old fuck. And then, you know, he meets some people. He goes into the dark underworld of the city that he lives in, and it's a journey. It is well worth reading. It is the first book that ever made me cry, and that is not very easy, because the only other book that made me cry is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. That's the only other book that ever made me cry, so this holds a very special place in my heart. I still want to get a tattoo of this book, but well, I'll let you know when I get it. I'll try to go through the next ones a bit more quickly. Next up, this I don't think I've seen this on BookTube. Maybe once, but not really that much. And I think the reason for it is that it's probably very hard to translate. And I think if you would translate it into English, well, it is translated into English, but I think it would lose a lot of its appeal, because it is, for almost all of it, written in the Berlin dialect. And that's pretty hard to translate that. You know, you could try to write it in like a New York accent, maybe that would come close, but that's not really the same thing at all. And this vibe, this atmosphere of Berlin in the 1920s, you know, it really sucks you in. When I read this, I started using some of the words and speaking in a little of a Berlin tongue, which I'm not from there at all, so that was kind of weird. But that's how much this book fascinated me. And it's about a criminal who gets released from prison for, was it attempted murder? For a serious fucking crime, and then just like him spiraling back into the same scene, back into crime, meeting with the same people. But it's not, it still feels kind of lighthearted. And this whole written in dialect, it, like John Steinbeck, he does that too. And I think it's not easy to pull off, but it can really make a book very vivid, and you can very, I'm missing the word here, but you should check it out if you know German. And maybe it's also well written in English. And also, I've been, I'm not from Berlin, but I've been there plenty of times. And it's really cool to see like this place that I've been to like many times on the cover of a book and to read about it. That is, I like that. Next up, these also kind of go together. We're past World War II now. This Günter Grass, I think out of all the post-war writers that I have read so far, he's my favorite one by far. The Tin Drum, the Blechtrommel. This is very much, I don't even know, man. It's a very long book. It's more than 800 pages. It goes through the whole life of the main character, who's a big weirdo. He has dwarfism. He always bangs a tin drum. He's very kind of neurodivergent. He also has like some supernatural powers, which is not really like super the focus of the book, but I guess it's kind of magical realism because of that. And he just goes through his life. He just does random shit. He lives through the war. And Günter Grass, I don't know if you know this, but he was in the Nazi army. He was in the SS, and then he changed his ways and changed himself completely. And most of his books are about that. He became a member of the Green Party in Germany, like of the more liberal left-wing party after that. And so a lot of people describe this book as an anti-war or anti-Nazi novel. And I don't necessarily agree with that. It's more this guy, it's him, this is the main character. He's very neutral. He just causes chaos. He's like the alignment that he's like chaotic neutral. He's really selfish. He's like a little child basically the whole time. And he just does whatever the fuck he wants. And he disrupts the Nazis, that's true, but he doesn't really do that out of political motivation just because he wants to disrupt them, And it's definitely very interesting. It's not, I'm talking about this like it's political. It's well, anything can be political, especially if it was written about the war, but it's not really the focus here. And it's a book that you really need to take time for. Like, you can read this over the course of a couple of months, but it will enrich your life, and I think you should check it out. Next up, I have never ever seen this book mentioned on BookTube. I haven't even checked out if it has an English translation, but it must have. It's also about the similarity, I didn't even say this. The similarity between this is that both of the main characters are boys or young men that are institutionalized, and they're in like psychiatric care, and you don't really find out why until later in the book. This is about this young man or this boy who writes. He reflects upon what happened in the wartime when he was younger, and it's mainly about his dad and his dad's friend. His dad is a police officer, and his friend is an artist, and then the Nazis ban his art, and the police officer is the one who has to execute it and burn his friend's paintings, and how that relationship changes. That's the part that really fascinated me. How power can change someone, how thinking they're doing the right thing can change someone, and how it's very, very profound and very deep. And also it's set in the very north of Germany, where I'm from, and I am right now. And that whole coastal feeling, like the the sea and the shore, the dikes, and that whole small town northern atmosphere, that I find that very, very appealing and very captivating. So check this out. This was also made into a movie not too long ago, which is how I actually found out about this book. And yeah, it's well worth it. Also, it's like almost 600 pages, but didn't really feel that long to me. Also, don't really bother with any of his other novels. I checked out a couple of them, and let's just not talk about those. And lastly, Das Parfüm by Patrick Süskind. I would probably put this in my top 5 books of all time. If you don't know, it's the little subtitle here is The Story of Murderer. It's about a guy who has an extraordinary sense of smell, and he wants to learn how to make perfume. And then he gets obsessed, and he wants to make the best smelling perfume, and he gets obsessed with these young, beautiful girls. And so he ends up killing them and making them into perfume. That's lovely, eh? And I don't know, some people might even call this a horror novel, which I don't know if I agree with that. The writing, the expressionism of it is absolutely beautiful. It is really, really moving. It is fascinating how this man can write about something so intangible as smell, which is like what almost all of this book is about smell, about perfume. And yeah, and the movie, I saw the movie years ago, and it has like Dustin Hoffman and Alan Rickman in it. It's also very, very well made how they portray the smell. And the ending, I'm not gonna give it away, but if you haven't read this book, the ending is gonna completely fuck you up and blow your mind and maybe make you horny. I don't know what kind of things you're into, but the ending of this book is astounding. And this is the only novel that Patrick Süskind wrote. He wrote some novellas too and some plays. I checked out some of those, and they're equally as good, actually. So he's very, very overlooked. He's very much a recluse and very quiet. But this man, does he deserve a Nobel Prize? I don't know. I'm just putting the thought out there, you know. Anyway, I need to go to work. So thanks for your time. I hope I introduced you to something that you didn't know before. And yeah, if you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. Maybe you hated them. And yeah, maybe I'll do a part 2 if I have the motivation to do it. And goodbye.